We've already looked at insert effects and the way that they're applied directly to channels, but we can also create send effects from the mix console as well. And send effects are best suited to things such as reverbs or delays, where you only need to use one instance of the plugin, and then you can send multiple channels, hence the name, to that single effect. So for instance, let's say that I wanted to put a reverb on the snare and toms. So rather than put the same reverb on both channels as an insert, I can right-click on this first blank send slot and choose Add Effects Channel to send one. Here I can choose the plugin that I want to use, so in this case we'll use Roomworks, and I can give it a name. Now with send effects, you want to make sure that the effect blend is always at 100%, or that the wet only button is enabled where it's available. So now, unlike an insert effect, this same reverb effect is available for use on the toms channel. And of course I could send as many different channels to that single reverb as I wanted to. So let's repeat the process now for the lead guitar track, this time using a stereo delay effect. Again, I'll make sure that the mix is set to 100% wet. So one other important feature of send effects is the pre or post fader function. And I'll show you what this does. So I'm going to take the drums group that I made earlier as an example, and we'll just send this to a new reverb. And I'll just call this test reverb. Now the default behavior is that as I bring the fader of the source track up and down, the level of the send effect will go up and down with it. And this is because the signal is being sent to the reverb after the fader. However, if I switch the send effect to pre-fader mode, then this send level remains constant regardless of the level of the fader. Now, of course, there are different times where you might want to use pre or post fader sends. One thing you might be able to do with pre-fader reverb, for instance, is to automate the dry signal to come slowly into the mix, allowing you to hear the reverb on its own. Although I'm sure there are many more instances where it might be useful. Now, interestingly, insert effects can also be pre or post fader. And you may have noticed from earlier that there's a green line in the insert effects list. So everything above the green line is pre-fader and everything below it is post. So what this means in practice is that if I was to put a distortion effect after the fader, then this fader would effectively be controlling the amount of signal that goes into this plugin. So perhaps in your mix, channels become more distorted or grungy the higher up you push their faders. Or a more practical application might be to put a brick wall limiter after the fader. So regardless of how high you push them, the output level is capped by the plugin. Now, of course, you're not limited to 2 post-fader inserts. You can simply click and drag this green line and move it anywhere within the 16 insert slots. Now, admittedly, post-fader inserts aren't something that I use a whole bunch, but there are many different creative and practical uses for them. So let's hold it here for just a moment, and then I'll carry on in the next video.